Thank you for hanging in to the end of the podcast. I'm excited to give you this installment. It's really an encapsulation of the best and worst times of my life. And it's really hard to do that in 30 minutes or an hour. But I will try and give you the best rundown of the evolution of my spirit. And evolution never quits. It quits if I quit. I'm very blessed and grateful to be alive today, knowing the situations I placed myself in or situations that were built up around me. So here it goes. My name is Autumn. I'm an alcoholic. I've been sober since August 14th, 2010, and for that, I am truly grateful. I believe it all began in the year 1977, the year that I was born. Our home lives are built around us, sometimes without our participation. The home that was built for me was one of a single parent. I am the second of two siblings. I have an older brother. We were born in California, Southern California. We were born to an alcoholic. I was born of two alcoholics. My father was not really present in my life. My mother was the sole caregiver for both of us, and she was alcoholic. Being the adult child of an alcoholic and an alcoholic myself, it's been an eye-opener. When I look backward in time through my recovery process, I see her faults as quite glaring. For a long, long time, I blamed my mother for my life. Parenting is hard, full stop. Our lives might have been enriched and improved greatly if she were sober. But as someone who carries the illness of alcoholism and has been relieved of actively drinking, I understand her on a level, on a almost cellular level. And at this point now in my life, I have a kinship with my mother based on that commonality, that sameness. That absolutely does not relieve her or absolve her for the physical and verbal acts of violence she committed on both my brother and I. My mother was a good person. She was ill, just as I am a good person. And I am ill too. I have recovered from a hopeless state of mind and body. For a long, long time, I was helpless, hopeless, and powerless against the constructs that were built for me. And the only thing that gave me relief and numbness was picking up a drink of beverage alcohol. It was the only thing that allowed me to take a breath and lay down the world that was on my shoulders. So my mother and my brother are both Caucasians. They are both white people. They present white. They have very fair skin. My brother was born blonde-haired and blue-eyed. My mother was naturally auburn-haired and hazel-eyed. I am the product of a relationship between my mother and father. My father is a black man. He is African-American. They met on the job. He romanced her, and I was produced. My father, from my mother's recounting, did not want to have any obligation or responsibility or really to have me exist. So to hear my mother tell it, he offered to pay to terminate her pregnancy. Obviously, that did not happen, and I came into the world. I am very grateful to be here, but it took many, many years, unfortunately. I was saved from a couple of attempts to end my life over being a mixed race person in a white household. It wasn't at all that my family was white that I had a problem with. It was me being mixed. And it wasn't me who had the problem with being mixed race. It was the world who had a problem with me being mixed race in my white family. It was the world that had a problem with my mother raising a mixed race baby. That dogged me every day, day in, day out. The fact that I was different. I learned from a very early age that I was different. And I always felt singled out because when I did go into the education system, so I went into public schools, I was raked over the coals. It would start with questions because I wore an afro. My mother didn't know what to do with my hair, understandably. So I wore an afro for the first, 10, 12 years of my life. So I would get questions about, are you a boy or a girl? From all the kids. Are you a boy or a girl? This is the 80s. Are you a boy or a girl? And then they would start in on my skin tone. I was darker skin tone when I was younger than I am today. I still have the capacity to be quite caramely in the summertime. Of the children at school who gave me the worst time, who made me feel the worst, unfortunately, were Black kids. I was called all sorts of names by Black kids. I was humiliated by Black kids. White kids had questions, and they framed those questions in such a way where it opened up a discussion. Now, being from an alcoholic home, I did everything I possibly could to keep myself small so that no one would notice me because of the tumultuous home life that I had and because I was constantly getting picked on for my afro and my skin color. I was being approached and shamed for something I could not control, mostly my skin. I had a great deal of resentment toward Black folks in particular growing up because they gave me the worst time. I tend to gravitate toward white kids because at least they created a more open space for me. Obviously my family members are white. It was what I was used to dealing with. As a full-grown adult, I have definitely learned to work through an open space in my heart for people of color. That sounds like it was work because it was work. I had a great deal of resentment because all I identified people with darker skin was they're going to make me feel bad about myself because that's what happened. Today, I've got friends along the color spectrum and they give my life color. And today, I try and see commonalities within us all because I've gone through my own experiences. I've created my own terrible, terrible events in my life. And those concepts, those ideas are stuff that we share. We've all made mistakes. We've all had down years. That is how I try to approach people now. But I need to tell you that I had a really hard time with Black folks coming up. My family, my mother and my brother were very supportive of me, very supportive. Dealing with the storms in the house and the storms at school, my brother and I got really close because he had his own perception of things that were going on. I'm sure he had his own challenges going to school and stuff. You never know what mood the alcoholic is going to be in. When we come home, you learn to do your chores, make sure your room is picked up. Everything was done. I did everything I could possibly do to facilitate the alcoholic's good mood. And it didn't matter sometimes what we did for ourselves or how clean the house was or anything. She would find something. And when she found something, she found us. And then she found the belt and the belt found us. It's just the way it was. It's also incumbent upon me as someone who is telling a story mirroring my mother's existence that my mother was not a bad person. It's important for me to drop that in when I get too deep. So you may hear that a couple of times or a few times here is she was not a bad person. She was sick. One of the most difficult concepts around love for me throughout my whole life is how did I ever get to a place where I still love someone who hurt me so tremendously, so terrifically, awfully, who exercised such casual, acute cruelty. how did I still love my mother until the day she died? How did that even happen? Again, it's the commonality. We were one in that way. We're both alcoholic. I can kind of see her in a different light. That does not mean I've absolved her of everything. It's just that being an alcoholic myself, I can kind of see what she was shooting for, and I can see how she got in her own way because I'm guilty of it too. I will get in my own way, and I will self-indulge time and time again in destructive behavior, to a lesser extent now that I'm in recovery, but I've seen it happen in my own life. And having the benefit of that experience, watching somebody completely torpedo their life time and time again, when I see it manifesting in my own life, I'm like, whoop, wait a second, you have tools today, right? At this point, I would like to skip ahead to my actual first drink. I went to college for a hot minute. I did not have a scholarship, and I did not have FAFSA money. I didn't have grants, and it never occurred to me to take out a student loan. And for that, I am truly grateful at this point in my life. So I went to a 4-year college with absolutely no plan, without absolutely any tools really as an adult, just some innate smarts. I had a good friend group. I was part of my high school band, and I played music in college for the minute that I was there. How I paid for that short time in college was car hopping at Sonic. I made a lot of money on roller skates, and it was a blast. Anyway, I was first introduced to alcohol at a party. A couple of tuba players who lived off campus. Ooh. Cool band nerds were throwing a party, and me and my BFF from high school had gone to the same college. We were roommates in college, so we attended this party, and I have no idea how we even procured the Boone's Farm wine coolers. I am so dating myself with that reference, right? But my first drink was, I just remember a 4-pack of Boone's Farm. I don't know. It might have. I call it Fuzzy Navel in my story when I recount this. I remember it as Fuzzy Navel. It might have been something else. I do remember sitting on a couch there, and when the wine coolers were introduced, I don't think we got them. I think they were given to us. I remember, taking the first drink, or taking that first wine cooler, and I remember consuming, I think, 3 of the 4. It felt like that was not an even split for me. I remember taking over that pack. I have always consumed beverage alcohol quite swiftly. I'm a fast drinker. It started probably because I had a sweet drink at first, but no, it was Bartles and James. No. It was a 4-pack. It was a 4-pack of Bartles and James Fuzzy Navel. I said Boone's Farm. Yes, first drink, wine cooler, and disproportionately consumed. I had more than she. That sick, soused, your head is swimming, you need to evacuate. That feeling came on me. Whether or not I actually vomited, I do not remember. I just remember years and years and years of that recurring feeling, that sour, gross, flooded, heavy feeling, and needing to get away from it. That was 1996. I was 19 years old. I don't remember feeling any particular way in the moment, in the session of my first drink. I don't remember the alcohol unlocking anything inside me. I just drank 3 bottles really fast. That's all, and I wanted to throw up. Between the years 1996 and 1999, the shell slowly built around me. So while I didn't immediately start drinking alcoholically after my first drink, it became abundantly clear that I was building up to quite a crescendo. And I know that I had run my first loved one off. There was a gentleman to whom I was married for, again, a very brief span of time. And he was a good person. He loved me. Full stop. He had a great job. He was an awesome person. He came from a great family. He loved me, and I didn't understand why he loved me. He showed me he loved me. He reached me on an intellectual level, and that is something that I fancy. I love a brain-to-brain connection. He was smart. He took care of me in all the ways that we desire to be taken care of from the inside out. He was very nurturing, very loving, very affectionate. And this poor man got involved with me at age 20-ish. We were married, becoming married to someone to whom I did not have the faculties to reciprocate. And I did not have the faculties to understand why I was being loved and value how I was being loved. What I did was act out. And how I acted out against that man was a very strange manifestation of my illness. Was I began stealing. I stole from my employer a lot of stuff. I stole a good dollar amount of stuff to the point that I got caught. I caught a case. I had to tell him because I needed to be picked up from jail. This poor man did not understand what he walked into, and neither did I, honestly. It was a whole circus. My mother was involved as well. I mean, she did not do the stealing, but I had made her an accomplice. It was terrible. So I had to take the two people in my life that I cared about the most and tell them that I'd done something against the law. It was rough, and I was, again, early 20s. And, this poor man, he's like, why did you do it? He's just asking me, why did you do this? And I don't have an answer for him. I don't know. I don't know why I stole. Still today, telling you that I do know why. But setting my mind back then, I had no explanation. I'm sure he felt shorted and slighted by that. But what happened as a consequence was I had to go to court and all of the trappings of criminal activity. He finally walked away from me because it became too much for him. I remember very clearly on the day he walked away from me and returned to the life he had before he met me. I remember it being a very emotional scene. I can still see his eyes today. I can still see both of us. But I clearly remember the look in his eyes. There was a lot of screaming. There was a lot of crying. And this man was just trying to tell me he did not sign up for this. He doesn't know who I am. And we're talking within 6 months of marriage, you guys. Within 6 months of marriage, I turned this guy who truly loved me from the depths of his soul into someone who needed to escape me. I remember his eyes being wet, his face being wet, from trying to make me understand that he cannot do us anymore. He was packing a duffel, and he said, you can have everything there is. We hadn't accumulated really anything at all, but he said, have it, I'm leaving. It's still sad today because since then, no one's asked me to be their wife. He ran crying and screaming away from me, and I was 22 years old. I was 22 years old, and I had wrecked him. I took somebody who loved me and broke them down through my actions. And when he left, all that did was give rise to open alcoholism. I was on probation for this theft. I was depressed, and I did not know how to handle my husband leaving me and the future with this case because it was an elongated process. I kid you not, in the stupidity and the flagrant just assholeness of the illness, I got a chair and a boombox and a 30-pack of beer, and I sat out in the front yard of my mother's home, and I played the same song for hours at a time while drinking beer in that lawn chair. My probation officer even drove by. My mother, in an effort to be gentle with me, came over and said, "You can't do this, Autumn. I understand you're hurting, but you can't do this. You're on probation. They're going to come get you. You need to at least take this inside." I don't know why I was sitting on the grass, drinking openly in public, violating my probation. I don't know. I don't know why I did that either. I know I was in a lot of pain, and I knew I didn't know what to do with it. Still very young. I had no direction. I had dropped out of college. I lost a loved one. I didn't know what to do with myself. I had no tools. I'm literally just out here existing from one situation to the next. I got no money. The utilities are sometimes on. I didn't know what to do. Now, during my very short marriage, my relationship with my ex-husband, I gained quite a lot of weight. After he left, in between drinks, I didn't eat. So I lost a lot of weight, and that brought me a great deal of false confidence. What I did with that false confidence is go out into the bars, and I became a regular at the bars. And single women, alcoholics in bars, they sort of adopt different cars on the train of alcoholism. And so for me, sex was a big deal. Sex was a tool. Sex was manipulation. Sex was a mean by which I felt okay. Sex was a means by which I was validated by strangers because I came from a good, pure love, and I liked that feeling even though I did not know how to reciprocate it. So seeking short-term validation from strange men became sort of a modus operandi. It was a byproduct of my illness. And I spent about a year actively seeking out sex while drinking. Worked as a waiter at the time. You talk about the perfect storm. You got an alcoholic who was waiting tables. Y'all ever know restaurant people? You know the business? It's riddled with addicts and alcoholics, the restaurant business, at least at that time. In my location, there was nothing but lots of free-flowing and drugs and lots of post-shift drinking. The blatant sexual behavior and all of that. It was a perfect storm for indulgence. And if you are young and directionless like me, or maybe older and directionless like me, it was a haven. I'd be behind in rent, work a double, I'd get my rent up, and then all of a sudden it would be gone because I would spend the remainder of the night out at the bars. And it was a day after day, week after week, merry-go-round of anonymous sex and being broke all the damn time. And all these weird little infighting, arguments. It's like sibling rivalries with my coworkers. It was dumb competition. It was so stupid. It was a short period in my life. That period was short, but it was potent because I was around a whole lot of people who thought like me, who lived like me, and it wasn't the most productive at all. What caused the end of that season is while I was out and about in the bars, I met a man. I met a man who was stunningly handsome. So I meet this guy who is literally fresh out of TDC, Texas Department of Criminal Justice, TDCJ. He's been out less than 30 days and he is getting what I call the homeboy homecoming. That is when felons come out of jail, out of prison, and their peers, their old friends, they treat them to endless booze and drugs. Everything's all paid for a month or two out at the bars. And so he was in the middle of his homeboy homecoming. I meet him and he was gorgeous, y'all. And he was what I would consider a foil character to mine. After having known him for a bit, he was actually quite creative. He was a poet / songwriter, but this was a mismatch. And this was a mismatch that lasted 7 years. Yes, we had a lot of fun. However, very quickly after becoming a couple, I was introduced to powder cocaine. While it was not shoved up my nose, he was a connection for me. I hung in there for 7 years because he gave me access to powder cocaine. And powder cocaine took this person who is prone to depression because she drinks. Cocaine operated as the foil to alcohol. So I felt energized and free and full. Whereas alcohol gave me the sense of numbness and relief. It was a tumultuous relationship. There was verbal abuse in that. There were echoes from my past in that relationship. Twice there was physical abuse as well. It's not his fault. I could have walked away at any time. I was not a victim. I was a volunteer. I knew exactly what I was doing. And while he did cause me a great deal of pain with his selfish actions, I was free to go at any time. I was not a prisoner. I chose to stay in that relationship for that length of time until I was placed in a position to exit it. I'm grateful for that experience, no matter how dark. It taught me a whole lot about what was missing in myself. It taught me that most of my dealings with men, I have to be uber conscious, or I choose to be very conscious of what is it that this man possesses that is stimulating me. And I have to ask myself, I have to constantly assess, is this going to be harmful for me? I'm very cautious in my dealings with men today because I have chosen incorrectly time and time again. And the reason I've chosen incorrectly time and time again, especially in this era in my life, is my motivations were subpar, deficient, very base level. The addition of cocaine in my life brought more dimension to the existing alcoholism. That was complicated in itself because procuring an illicit or illegal drug is not as easy as going to your nearest corner store and loading up. When he ended up with me, that effectively ended my relationship with cocaine. And the reason why I don't identify myself or introduce myself as someone who is addicted to narcotics is because I didn't need the spiritual experience to separate me from cocaine. What I needed the spiritual experience to separate me from was alcohol. Alcohol was always there for me. So when that relationship ended, I went on another year binge of sex. Lots of sex, lots of drinking. In 2010, the walls of the illness started to close in on me. Some stuff happened for me that precipitated me acknowledging that I needed help. In April of 2010, I was coming home from an affair with a married man. Yep, I did that too. It was a year-long affair that I had with a married man. I was coming home and I was about 50 miles away from home. I got stopped for drunk driving. Thank God. Thank God. It was Easter weekend, 2010. I got my first DWI. I had my dog in the car. I'd been out all day, had my dog in the car. I got popped on the 610 loop. I'll never forget that. I was very, very drunk. I believe I blew a .26 that night. I was stopped after swerving, almost hitting multiple cars. And so I landed in jail that night. And it was scary, to say the least. Houston jails, any jail that you go to in Houston, any jail is bad. But when you wake up from a blackout, I woke up from a blackout. My car's in the pound, my dog's in the pound. I'm away from home, and it was very, very scary and jarring. I called my mom. I told her what happened, and she jumped on it. She helped me. She located my dog, thank God. I don't have any kids, and I'm not a person who considers their pet their child, but it hit me between the eyes that my dog had gone to a kill shelter. They had taken my dog to a kill shelter because of what I did. It was all I could do to get my mom to get my dog. Children and animals don't ask to be here. And it still hurts me to this day that I put her in danger. Once my dog was secured, my mom worked on getting me out, and I was very ashamed of myself, and one more time, I couldn't answer why that was. Why did you do that? Why would you do that? I almost hurt people on the highway in a major metropolitan city that is known for drunk driving. So I spent 3 days in jail and got a court date. That was April. I was scared straight from drinking. I think I stayed dry for, 2 weeks, 10 days. And by May, I was drinking every day again, pending a court date for drinking and driving. A physical manifestation of the illness popped up. I had come home from an ice house, so that is basically an open air warehouse where you drink, a little local joint. I came home, and my house didn't have air conditioning at the time. I'd worn a pair of Levi's jeans, and those jeans were quite sweaty. I am standing up, pulling my jeans off, and all of a sudden I fall. I lose my balance because I'm drunk, and I fall with the weight of my whole upper body. My whole body from my butt up falls on my ankle, and I break my ankle drunk. I can't feel that my ankle is broken. I just feel incapacitated, and then I pass out. I wake up in the morning at some point, then I feel the pain, and I also have to pee. So I am on the floor after I've come to. I'm on the floor like commando style. I cannot stand. I am pulling myself toward the bathroom in the house. I'm able to relieve myself, but I'm in a great deal of searing pain. My ankle has swollen up at this time, and it is black. And I get to the couch, and I rest on the couch, and I pull the phone out, and I ask my mom for help one more time. Mom, something's going on with my ankle. She's call 911. I get the EMS treatment. I go to the hospital. I set up surgery. I have my ankle repaired, thank God. I have a plate and 10 screws plus a giant screw holding my ankle together. But I'm very grateful for it to be repaired. That was May 2010. My first DWI was adjudicated July of 2010. So I had my probation, my conditions. I had a great deal of things to do for the first offense. I reoffended in August of 2010. I was caught up from a traffic stop and sent to jail. And no, the judge was not happy that I reoffended on probation. I spent a few more days in jail. The turning point for me was I was being released for a second time for the second DWI. I called my mom to come get me. I'm down in downtown Houston, and I smell. They've taken my lighter away from me. I had smoked cigarettes at the time. And I'm like, shit, I don't even have a lighter, so I had to buy a cigarette for like $1 from the guy on the street. Oh God, those vultures they're out there. So I bought a cigarette and had him light it for me, and I called my mom to come get me. And I'm on the phone with mom. She's like, I just need to get myself dressed, or take a shower, whatever. Downtown Houston was 45 minutes from the house, so it would be a minute anyway till she came and got me. So we're talking logistics and how are you, and all this other stuff. Are you okay? Do you have a place to do you have a place to wait for me, and all that? And there was a Subway sandwich shop just across the way from me, and I said, sure, I can camp out at the Subway while I wait for you. And so we're saying our goodbyes on the phone, and what jumped out of me changed my life. The words that freely flowed without my own consciousness being attached changed my life. In a conversation with the alcoholic who verbally and physically abused and tainted my childhood, to whom I am completely and utterly attached as a daughter, I say to her, I need help. And her response to me was, I know you need help. I'm going to get you the help that you need. And we hung up, and I waited for her. She came and got me, and I was in an AA meeting that night. I've never had another drink of alcohol since then. And again, to that I say I'm truly grateful. My last drink was August 12th, 2010. I dried out. My first fully dry day was August 14th, 2010. Yeah, my mom had set up me coming into a meeting. She found a meeting, a local meeting, set it up. We came in, and I don't remember exactly the first meeting or how all of that rolled out. I just remember feeling like there was a spotlight on me, and just very conscious of my surroundings, and I felt sheepish and shamed and awkward, and the reality of asking for help kind of set in. I'm like, oh shit, that means I got to do something. I don't know who these people are. That particular meeting was full of older folks, and I just didn't know. For all the many years I sought to camouflage myself and to not be seen, I was seen in a meeting of AA, and it made me entirely uncomfortable because those folks know who I am. It made me uncomfortable because without even speaking, my alcoholism was all over me. And I had come to the end of the road. And the last house on the block at the end of that road was Alcoholics Anonymous for me. I was scared, and I was mad at myself. I was just ashamed and tired. I was honestly fucking tired of being in jail. I was tired of repeating the same behavior in my life that got me fucking nowhere. It landed me nowhere. Everything I tried to do was stupid and wrong. And so I hated myself. I had nothing. I had nothing when I came through the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous. I had fucking zero. These strangers, they built me up, and they taught me why I was different from other people. They helped me understand that it's okay to be different, but it's not okay to go around unhealed and untreated. They taught me that the action of alcohol on my body and my brain is different than other people. They taught me I wasn't a bad person. They taught me I was a sick person. And we love you, and we want to help you. Everything that I had ever sought in my life in terms of validation and acceptance, I found it in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. all the guilt, shame, and remorse I ever felt in my life was exemplified and understood in these people who I'd never met before. There's a great deal of literature about why we are the way we are, and I ate it up. I read so many recovery books the first year of my life, the first year of my sober life. It helped me tremendously to just gain the knowledge of why I feel so spiritually deficient. And I was able to identify that I'm not a bad person. I'm spiritually deficient. There is a hole inside me that I have sought to fill with alcohol, drugs, and men/sex. For me to come to that understanding within a group of people who have similar experiences and we can work through those together, it's the commonality, it's the kinship, it's the people who have lived the way that I've lived or felt the way that I've felt, because it's about the feelings. The manifestations of my illness may be completely different. I came in on the heels of some legal trauma and the great deal of guilt that I felt at putting the public at risk from my own illness. Other people had other impetus for coming in. It does not matter what the circumstances are. It's all about the feelings. And coming together with knowledge about why we are different and how to get to a place where I'm ready to accept spiritual help, because that's what happened for me. Now I see, being on the other side of it for so many years, now I see that I was positioned in a way that I could hear my higher power say, it's time for you. When I look back at my life, at all the guideposts, the milestones, the hurts, the efforts that failed, but brought me to another place, I can see the loving and powerful hand of God work through my life. The loving and powerful hand of God that I have refused over and over again. I insisted upon taking my life into my own hands and making it fully my responsibility, and look what it got me. I am not a religious person. I had zero background in any particular organized religion. I was not a part of a church at any point. What happened was I accepted piecemeal the consequences and the implications of a spirit of a universe that is presiding over us all. If I couple the existence of a power greater than myself, the fact that it lives, works, and behaves through us, and try to heal from my own wreckage and get better on a daily basis, that's a simplified way of stating the serious effort that's required to commit to this work. But I can see it over and over and over again. And when I was new, I caught fire with this program because the desire to live took over in me. The hope began to swell. Actual hope, actual direction, actual purpose in life began to swell inside me, and I was moved spiritually over and over again. My whole personality changed as a result of allowing new and different ideas, being open-minded, honest, and willing to accept some really powerful rearrangements inside myself by simply listening and acting as if I'm not a horrific failure in life. By adopting some sort of hope through action, reaching out to another person, making a conscious effort to change my behavior through the steps outlined in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Be honest with myself, rigorously honest with myself at all times. That's why today transparency is very important to me. I would much rather give myself away, because I feel like every day that I am successfully alcohol free is a result of someone giving themselves to me. I do not mind being a conduit, because it's my humble opinion that we are here to serve as conduits. We're here to serve as mirrors. And so many people have died in this illness because they absolutely refused to accept spiritual help. I am utterly sorry for them, but the inverse is actually true as well. I have lived a life beyond my wildest dreams as a sober person. There are certain concepts that are now a working part of my mind. Number one is I don't drink. It's not a forced thing I have to remember at this point. But when I was newly sober, I surrounded myself with like-minded people. That meant going to meetings every day. That meant reading my big book or associated approved literature every day. It meant putting pen to paper when my sponsor said, do your work. I have a very reliable sponsor who I still use today. I am sober as a direct result of my sponsorship and my relationship to my higher power, full stop. Let me tell you, there's a lot of people who walk around with no tools and are not healed and just don't drink today. That's not enough for me. I want every bit of the life that my higher power intended for me. And in order for me to do that, just not drinking today is not enough. I want more, bigger, fuller, vivid experiences, and I want to contribute today. I attempted to take my life 3 times in my life. Today, I want to contribute. Today, I see people with my heart. I see the way I want to be seen. I don't hate myself today. I'm not utterly insecure today. And at this point, as hard as I have fought to become the person that I am today, who is ever evolving, ever striving for new growth, there is not a fucking person, place, or thing that would ever get me to drink for the rest of this 24 hours. Period. Point blank. I have had some heartaches, y'all. I have cried over boys in my big girl life. I have cried over some boys. I have cried over my job. I have cried over friendships. To the depths of my soul, I have felt wrecked and damaged in my sober life. Never occurred to me to drink because I fiercely protect that part of who I am, because when I greet the world, it has never been more apparent than as of up to and including this day in my sober life. When I greet the world, people fucking like me. When I greet the world, people welcome me. They want me to come back. That is not a lack of humility on my part. It's look how good God is. Look how good God is all the time. It made me someone who is welcomed with open arms, who is regarded warmly, and for whom the public has a deep affection for. When I talk to people one-on-one, people freaking like me. I went decades not liking myself. And today I'm sitting in a sumptuous little shoebox of an apartment that is so colorfully appointed and decorated. I'm talking into my phone, trying to be helpful to other people today. Yes, you can tell this has been a very emotional experience because I have scratched and climbed and I have continued to seek help. There are people who want to help. So my humble suggestion is, if you think you have a problem with alcohol, I think it's a really great start to dig around, maybe put pen to paper and examine that for yourself. If you have a trusted closed mouth friend with whom you might be able to discuss this, we'll keep it private for you. Just start the conversation. Look back at your experience. I had to look at my drinking history. And the first bit of homework that my sponsor gave me was to look at my drinking history. Look at the actual timeline from my first drink to now and see what the consequences of my drinking were. Am I able to couple consequences around my drinking to begin to see a picture and a pattern develop through discussing my behavior and trying to correct that behavior in the moment, which is a lot of work. There have been all kinds of phone calls during the day and the night with my sponsor. It's always really rough the first 5 years, honestly. But the first few months, all I did was cry in meetings. And God bless those people. they call on me to share and I end up crying, and I'm talking and crying, much like I've done. Not much has changed in the last almost 13 years. I'm talking and I'm crying, but I'm healing and I'm taking in new information all at the same time. What I've done is put myself in a position to be helped. It's a very simple process. Recognize there's a problem, or there might be a problem. Ask for help. Accept the help that is given. And finally, commit the actions that will help you to a better life. That's all I did. That is all I did. There's an instruction manual, and there are direct stories from actual alcoholics who have lived this life and recovered from a hopeless state of mind and body. There's a ton of literature out there. If you're too afraid to talk to somebody at first, go read some books. I recommend the book Alcoholics Anonymous. It was very helpful for me. Now, within that literature, you will find directly from one of our co-founders that we do not have a monopoly on recovery. There are many other means to recover, and I have no judgment about those other methods. This worked for me. That's all I'm saying. As I said before, I'm available. I don't mind having these conversations. I want to be helpful. If I can't directly be helpful, I will find you the help that you need. And I want to share with you about the alcoholic who helped me get the help that I needed. A couple of things. My sobriety date is August 14th, 2010. My mom also got sober on August 15th, 2010. And so she told me afterward, into our recovery, our mutual recovery time, she told me that she needed a beer. She needed a beer to get me to a meeting. And that is the most alcoholic thing I've ever heard. That is so us. That's exactly how we operate. As an extension of my mother's story, I do want to share this because I have a tendency to rake her over the coals, but I would like to also share the following. My mom and I had been sober and doing well, working through our stuff separately. We would share our recovery with each other, the happenings and what we learned and all that stuff. But we really needed to keep our recoveries somewhat separate because we had affected each other through our drinking days. It was important for us to have separate recoveries. Anyway, my mother in 2013 had been complaining of some bowel issues and stomach stuff. She had these just weird happenings that she knew were not right, but she sought some help. She didn't have medical insurance, so she went to free clinics and things like that, and they kind of diagnosed her with IBS and some other things, and none of the medicine or any of the information that she was given was really suitable for her. It didn't work. And finally, my best friend in recovery at the time, we decide we're going to make a guerrilla plan and kind of kidnap my mom and take her to a real doctor, right? And that's what happened. We take my mom to the emergency room. I forget, it's all a bit of a blur, but I forget what the emergent need was, why we took her to the emergency room. I'm sure she was actively ill, but I can't remember what the symptoms or the manifestations of the illness were at that time. So we're in the ER of this big hospital system. My mother is diagnosed with cancer, and that was scary. We made a follow-up appointment with an oncologist to do a biopsy. The results of that biopsy were stage 2 squamous cell carcinoma cervical cancer. It's still I'm going back in that place in my mind now, and it's still kind of shocking. I'm shocked just as the onlooker, and as family. It was a heavy time. The hospital system has an excellent oncology care team. She got an oncologist, a radiologist, and all of the trappings of a really phenomenal care team. And my mother went through radiation treatment, and she had cancer for quite a long time. It was unchecked HPV. So my mother takes the treatment, about 8 weeks worth of treatment, and she is seemingly doing well. I mean, the cancer takes you down, so you have to build your strength back up, you build your body mass a little bit back up, and energy levels and all of that stuff. And so by her follow-up I think she was like 8 weeks on, 8 weeks off, and by the follow-up of that treatment, even though she was feeling better, she felt like she had a slight wrench in her back. She thought she might have grabbed the garage door in a jaunty way that wrenched her back or something. And so she was complaining of some back pain to her care team. Well, what happened was her cervical cancer had metastasized and it was beginning to spread along her body. So it was starting to grab onto her spinal cord and things like that. It had radiated throughout her trunk around her belt line, and it made her think that she had back pain because of that. So by January of 2014, we as a group and my mom as an individual was trying to figure out how should she move forward. Surgery was out from the outset because of the location of the cancer being so near her bladder. I forget what other steps were offered to her as a result of this follow-up. My mom had shrunk down really small. She wasn't a large woman to begin with, but it had weakened her in all senses. So my mother declined any further treatment. That was January 2014. It's hard, you take in my mind, you take a big breath. I don't even deal with cancer, it's not even in my body, but I know through watching her deal with this awful, awful illness and being in recovery from another awful, awful illness, I just sort of held my breath and waited for her to interpret how we should all act. Basically, it's a weird experience. It's an out-of-body experience when someone you love goes through cancer treatment, and when the decision is made to decline any further treatment, it feels very final. We did some preliminary steps. We got her a will going. We made some funeral arrangements. I listened to what she wanted and all of that. And what's weird is when you're waiting to die, you're actually still kind of living your life. I mean, it wasn't as big and grand because, as I said, the cancer had taken a lot from her body. And going from active treatment to an interim time prior to palliative care, she stayed in a state of self-monitoring. I monitored too her wellness. Does she have a fighting spirit to stay alive today? Is she a little down because the bleakness? Is she in pain? I'm checking in with her all the time. I'm visiting with her all the time, as much as I can emotionally take, as much as she can emotionally take. So I stayed real close to her. She would have really good days where they were reminiscent of her more youthful 30s and 40s days, my younger mom days. And it's very deceptive. Cancer is a liar. Cancer is a demon. And so there would be opposite type of days too, where, she didn't seem to... She didn't seem to be making any sense in conversation. I couldn't understand because I'd never seen it before. I'd never dealt with a dying person up close before. I had never dealt with that. And I felt so small and so scared and so stupid. I felt stupid and ignorant. And I felt guilty for having negative feelings towards my mom during that. All of this stuff came up. I'm sober, she's sober, I'm trying to be a good daughter, I'm staying on top of stuff, and, my mom's slipping away. And the time did come where my mother did need to be placed on palliative care, which is the final stage of someone who is dealing with cancer. And that was also quite heady for me and everyone affected in our family and friend group. Everyone had their own experiences with mom's illness. And the last week of her life, she had 24-hour care. We had 2 nurses came in. I mean, these were excellent, good people that were a part of the end of life care team. And 2 nurses, 12 hours at a time, monitoring her. My mother was slowly placed into a coma. She could hear us, and the nurses tended to her physical needs. But they gave her a cocktail of morphine and methadone every few hours. Mother died on August 1st, 2014 at 7 p.m. It was a big thing for me to be sober in handling that. I went on with the business of her post-life. We gave her a very nice memorial. My mother was cremated. Her body had shrunk down to a size that was quite jarring. I think she was about 75 pounds when she passed away. That's what cancer does. I know from the depths of my soul that my mother tried. She just did not have a lifetime of tools. She picked up the kit of spiritual tools towards the end of her life, and she did try hard. If she had started earlier, our life together might not have been so deeply hurtful for so long, but it is a joy of my life to have been a sober, good daughter who gave my mother, who raised us all alone, a great send-off. For all her warts, she did try. I have her picture up in my apartment. That raggedy bitch is going to witness every victory of my life. Period. Point blank. Sometimes I think to myself, your mother hurt you so bad. Why do you keep her picture up? So she can watch me live this phenomenal life. So she can see me grow and change and evolve and acknowledge, I see you. I know you tried. This is me out there living the life you never afforded yourself. So yeah, I keep her picture up. I keep my brother's picture up too. We, for all of our shortcomings, we are a family. And, my mother was by no means perfect, but she raised 2 kids on her own, and they're good people. My brother and I are good people. In spite of the abuse, in spite of the alcoholism, we live good lives. We are solid, honest people. And it's available. I'm here to report a good life is available in sobriety. You just have to reach out for the help and take the help offered. Take it. Keep finding out what's out there. Keep growing toward a powerful sense of purpose, and your life will change. Your life will change if you keep going far, far away from that last drink. I have talked way longer than I really even planned, and I hope this gives some sort of picture of what the effect of alcoholism has been on my life. But the effect of the recovery has taken me to places inside myself and outside in the world that I never knew was possible. Believe and do the next right thing, and things will work out for you. But in the meantime, ask for some help and rely on that help. If someone is reliable, rely on them. Learn how to trust. Stop hating yourself and try and do the next right thing. Don't drink in between. Thanks very much. It's been a pleasure.